leadership, and I am going to ask anyone who has an empty chair next to them to raise their hand so that we can find some more seating. Or an empty chair at a table. An empty chair at a table. Okay, we have several, so if you'd like to sit at a table, find a place.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have a few announcements before our official welcome. The restrooms are right over there. Below, there's a door with a sign above that says restrooms, and there are additional restrooms upstairs. Behind the coffee pots, the coffee urns, there are places to dispose of your plates. I want you to understand that both the plates and the flatware are compostable. So you can dispose of those in the compostable. I believe the cups are also. Yeah, all the plates and, yeah, are compostable, and thank you for the purchase of those. What else was I would ask you now if you would remember to silence your phones. Silence your phones, because when we have our special speaker, we don't want to. Like, I think, who would call me? Everyone is here. So I do want to welcome you to WAMM's annual meeting in person. We're also, I think, being live streamed around Facebook. And our Carla is taping, so you'll see it later, watch it later. We often, as many organizations do, we often, Sarah? We often open our meetings with a land acknowledgement. And I'm pretty sure that all of you are clear that we are sitting here and standing, and when we go out, and when our WAMM co-chairs, by the way, are in Arizona and Michigan, and that's why they are not residing. Jo and Emma are far away, as is Mary Jean. Can't be here in person today from our board. But all of us are standing on land that was stolen by deception and violence from the indigenous people who were here before most of our immigrant heritage family members came. And we do want to acknowledge that in a respectful way. But more than that, we as WAMM are inviting you to look into and learn about and find ways to support additional indigenous organizations so that we can reach out in ways other than just stating an acknowledgement. One that I am particularly interested in, it's not only indigenous, but many indigenous people are active in it, is the East Hennepin Urban Farm Project. And you can find information about that on the web, on the internet. Also, in your program, there's a listing of one additional Native organization. There is, of course, the Health Board, the Minnesota Indian Women's Resource Center, and there's website is there and their address, so maybe learn about them and find ways to support, and we appreciate that. Later on, but I think I'd like to do it right now too, we're going to introduce and acknowledge our WAMM's staff director, Kristen Dooley, who is here. Interim, thank you, Kristen, for your work over this last year and several years. Our interim office manager, Fiona Radel, was not able to be here today because she had a trip to New York. We've got WAMM people all over. And she's been covering responsibilities since Katie Davis left the WAMM staff at the end of last year. I am going to ask you now to have a moment of silence because, and in particular to think about people we have lost, people who've been lost to us and lost to the world over this last year. And let's take a minute to just hold them in our thoughts and minds. Thank you. And thank you to all of them. You know, the WAMM founders thought there should never be a meeting, a gathering of people without an action. And on your table there are green and blue postcards. And your action today, one of your actions today, could be to sign a postcard. These are regarding the embargo against Cuba, one to President Joe Biden and one to Senator Amy Klobuchar. And I will say, I cannot bring to mind the time when I have sent a thank you to Senator Klobuchar, but she has sponsored legislation in the U.S., in the House, calling for the lifting of the U.S. embargo against Cuba. It's true. It's true. And she did visit Cuba with President Obama years ago and apparently has been working toward this, but she's been, have you ever heard of that? No, she's quiet about it. So let's remind her to speak out about her activity. Remember to bid on the baskets that are offered back in that area and to visit the literature table before and during your break time and as you leave today because there's important stuff there. And you can also bid on a basket of WAMM stuff to put you right in good standing and a basket of treats and supplies for a party. We do have a special program today, and we also have, I think we'll ask Sophia to sing during the break, that's right, during the little pause before the Q&A. But I'm going to ask Sarah Olson to introduce our speaker today, and Sarah is a current member of the WAMM Board too. There you go, Sarah.
WAMM has several committees that focus on specific topics. I am on the committee named Tackling Torture at the Top, also known as T3. And that's how I met our speaker today, Coleen Rowley, one of T3's founders. Coleen Rowley is a former FBI agent and legal counsel in the FBI's Minneapolis division. She testified as a whistleblower about pre-9/11 failures to share intelligence information that the FBI and other agencies had that could have prevented 9/11 and ultimately the invasion of Iraq. She publicly opposed that invasion as she does the current U.S.-NATO proxy war fought with Ukrainian bodies against Russian soldiers that may lead to World War III, the war to end all wars. Since retiring from the FBI, besides T3, Coleen is involved in the Twin Cities Committee to defend Julian Assange. She has visited Julian Assange several times when he was ensconced in the Ecuadorian embassy and is a member of Veteran Intelligence professionals for sanity. She recently spoke out about the legal case of Leonard Peltier, long-time imprisoned American Indian movement prisoner, calling for consideration for parole from incarceration. Today, Today, Coleen Rowley will delve into the topic of ethical decision-making in her talk, Psychopathy and Propaganda, Psychology 101 that everyone needs to know. The link
And unfortunately, there's no nice visual images behind me, so you've got to look at me. I have rehearsed this talk, and when they said, I said, you want to talk? I go, no, not really. I'm not that great at talking. I got tired of it. And they said, well, it'll be on propaganda. And so that just hit me again. That's really the talk I've been giving since 9/11. How these powerful people lie. I mean, that's why I became the whistleblower. And I used to call it ethical decision making because it's why good people, otherwise good people, do horrible things, including lying, but also including murdering even, torturing and murdering. We have this concept from television. The old Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., the old Cowboys and Indians, every single show, fictional movie, tends to be good guys versus bad guys. Complete myth, but we all internalize that. There's good guys, this is why police, by the way, they're told this, that we're fighting, we're doing justice, and these are the bad guys. I was told this in the first day in the FBI. Good guys versus bad guys. Very, very simplistic. But when you are told this, you believe these myths and you become capable of the worst atrocities. So this is the talk I gave all along. And, after World War II, there was a woman, Hannah Arendt, who came up with the theory to explain why these were otherwise good Germans who did horrible things. And this is not the only time in history, but she came up with the theory of banality of evil. So the key word here is banality. Not what we saw on TV, that there's bad guys. Hitler wasn't born an evil baby. I hate to tell you, neither was Pol Pot, neither was Stalin, neither were some of our leaders. They weren't born evil. But I'm going to explain a little bit about this. Now, the sad thing is, I hate to say this up front, but having given this talk to colleges and professional groups, and again, I was called it ethical decision-making at the start, back in 2004. Having given it, I'm not sure it matters that people understand how the psychopathy and the yin-yang of psychopathy and followers of psychopathy, psychopaths, how this actually works. And it's hardwired into the human condition as we evolve from the animal kingdom. I'm sorry to tell you, this is what we are. Get off your high horse, Aryan supremacy, and FBI good guys, and the chosen people. Every single group that believes that they are superior, including many of us who believe the human race is superior. And the truth is we're not. We are hardwired this way. And there's not a darn thing you can do about psychopathy. Psychopaths, very little, very little. Maybe let's not give up all hope, but there's very little. I came in contact with quite a few, by the way, complete psychopaths, but we're watching them on the TV every single day. And, okay, so, initially, I used the social psychology experiments that followed Hannah Arendt. So once she came up with the banality, a guy named the social psychologist Solomon Esch. It's too bad I don't have the image. He came up initially with the line test. And these 3 lines are all different lengths. You can see it with your eyes. One is shorter, one is longer. But he didn't give the test in a straightforward way. He brought in groups of 3 people at a time, and by prior agreement, the first 2, instead of picking the shortest line, they picked the longest line. Now, again, we don't want to know this, but when you're the 3rd person, and the other 2 people, even these were strangers, not people you knew and respected, just strangers. Oh, well, maybe they know better than me. The 2/3 of the time, this experiment was repeated with colors and shapes. The 3rd person goes with the other 2. They deny their own senses and pick the wrong one. It just shows you how easy this is. Now, Solomon Esch, I think he did this in the early 50s, he had a student named Milgram. Now, people have heard of Milgram. Milgram did the electric voltage test. And this is just an extension of the conformity, but this is obedience to authority. When there is a person standing in a white scientific coat, and they say, continue, in a very authoritative voice, say, continue the experiment. Again, about 2/3 of all people will go on to give a lethal, press a button that gives a lethal electric shock to the person in a room next door. It's just that simple. I'm sorry, what?
Not lethal, they won't murder him.
No, it was a setup. Just like Solomon Esch was a setup. These were social psychologists. People say maybe you could do these same experiments now. This was done in the later 50s. And it was a setup. They were not giving. The guy groaned and said, I'm dying, and pretended he was having a heart attack in the room next door. And they kept taking the voltage up and up. And so the poor guy who was the one being tested, he didn't know this. He thought the other guy was being tested. And so he at some point, it actually is past the line. It's all in red. He thinks he's giving a lethal dosing voltage. And they do it, 2/3 of all people. I know, hard to believe, isn't it, the great human race? But this has also been replicated. And now, frankly, it's such a sad thing. And when the person finds out that they did this, they feel so bad. So maybe it's not even ethical to even give that experiment now. But you got to know that that's the case. And then the last one that's very important to propaganda is called the Zimbardo experiment. Esch, Milgram, Zimbardo. Zimbardo he had a class, and these were classmates. They were actually friends with each other, etc. And he told half the class, you're in charge. You're the prison guards. And the other half of the class, you are the horrible, deplorable inmates. And so again, this is this notion of telling any group of people about their superiority and their virtue. And when that happens, they have to end the experiment within a couple of hours, because classmates are torturing their friends. Is that bad? Okay, I know, I see all this look of disbelief, but this is the truth. These experiments have been done. When I talked about it, I would often get, oh, it can't be true, etc. But, this is what explains all of the lying and the mendacity and the murdering of millions of people. Millions and millions of people have been killed. And, of course, we talked about the Native Americans, but, that song by Bob Dylan, With God on Our Side, it starts off with killing the Native Americans. And then it goes to the Spanish-American War, and then the World War I, World War II. Listen to the song if you don't know it. It is absolutely spot on. And so the problem is, with God on our side, that is a way of telling people that they are superior. God is on your side. A lot of militaries in the past, the Romans, they used religion. We're not using that so much anymore. We're using it that we're the exceptional rulers. And we have democracy, and we have peace and love. But we're trying to spread these good American values. So that's taken the place of what it used to be Christian missionaries, etc., believing that they were spreading the word of God. All right. Okay, so psychopathy, that's the correct pronunciation, not psychopathy, it's less than maybe 1% of all people that have hardwired brains, and maybe 1 to 2%. Depends on what you use as the spectrum of what is a psychopath. But the scientists have come up with a range of traits, and these traits, if you test up, they have them quantified. If you're 40 on the psychopathy thing, you're a real Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer, okay? But you start having these psychopathic traits at 27, not 40. So there's actually, of the 1 or 2% of all people that have psychopathic, and I often say it's talents, psychopathic talent, because these things that I'll name to you, it's, again, too bad I don't have my image of these things, are what we consider leadership virtues. We don't consider these as psychopathic traits or talents. We consider them as leadership. One of them is courage, by the way. People used to say, "Oh, Coleen, you have courage." We're like, "Oh, okay, I got a modicum of some courage. I have gone against some authority figures in the past, but I'm not. The real psychopaths are risk takers. These are the people now. Like I don't want to name our wealthy billionaires, but they've taken risks their whole lives, and sometimes they lose it all. Well, Donald Trump's a good example. I hate to bring him up, but going bankrupt 2 or 3 times, but just continuing on. Which leads me to another trait, which we often think of as good. We tell young kids to do this. Perseverance. Perseverance is a psychopathic trait. Most people, if they don't win or succeed the first or second times they try something, they give up. Our neocon warhawks will never give up. At one point after the Bush administration, they thought the neocons were over. There were articles about it. No, they're just like the end of the Dracula movie, when they think they kill the monster, and they keep coming back to life. That is perseverance. And again, this is a psychopathic trait or virtue. Another one is focus, okay? Don't get distracted. Focus on the task. A great example, I have an image that has examples, and one of them is a neurosurgeon. Okay, who would think a neurosurgeon is a psychopath? No, they do brain surgery, they help me. They have the trait, though, that they can block out everything and focus on the task. And so many surgeons, if they're going to be good, have to have that trait. Maybe they don't have all of the panoply of the other ones. Bomb diffusers, again, they have to just focus. And very few people can do that. That's why we all get distracted when the weather balloon comes over. When Seymour Hersh tells us that the United States just bombed the German-Russian pipeline, and people were a little concerned about that, all of a sudden that Chinese weather balloon comes over. And guess what? We're all distracted. So it works that focus is one. Okay. This is one that I have to say, I would tout my own horn, I do have this trait. It's the ability to read others, okay? And then, I don't have this one so much, but ability to persuade and influence goes with that ability to read. Now, the best example on my PowerPoint was the old detective show Columbo. Because Columbo, of course, he was really something else. In the very first 5 minutes of walking into the crime scene, he knew who the killer was. Pretty good, huh? He could tell body language, you know, the audience is like, oh gosh, maybe it's him. But Columbo knew from the start. And then the whole show was just trying to get the guy to admit it and set him up, etc. So the ability to read others and see where they're coming from quickly. Now, the real Ted Bundy type psychopaths, the fraction of the 1%, by the way, fraction of the 1%, they've done a study where they show a video of women walking in front of a psychopath. They actually, with quite good accuracy, can tell which woman was already either raped or victimized prior to this, just by how the person walks or whatever. Pretty incredible. Why? Because they're predators, and this is their whole thing, is to discern how. Okay, the other example. How many people have seen the George C. Scott Flim Flam Man? Okay, watch that one. It's really good. That's the best movie about con artists I've ever seen. And so he's a great con artist. And of course, in the FBI, these were a dime a dozen, some worse than others. But the ability to persuade and influence people to buy something by pressing their own greed button, you know, their own emotional vulnerability to greed. That's how Madoff, that's how, was it Peterson here in Minnesota? I forget his name. But we've had quite a few con artists. And, you know, those are great examples of ability to read others, know where they're coming from, and then press the buttons on that person to persuade or influence, and ultimately to control. It's all about control. The next ones are all politicians, by the way. What's the trait? Personal charm and charisma. I'm high in the ability to read. I'm very low in the personal charm and charisma. I found out. I mean, I ran for Congress, and that was not my forte. Personal charm and charisma. But, you know, the Daniel Quayles, the Sarah Palins, you've got to have the looks, and then you've got to have charisma. That's huge. We think of it as a good thing, right? Interpersonal skills. The last one is blinding ambition, personal ambition. Again, these are things we want little kids. We want them to have self-esteem and confidence. And you want them to be ambitious. Aim for the stars, you know, we tell this. Psychopaths don't have to be told. They have unbelievable amount of personal ambition. You know, normal people are just content, you know, if we can pay our bills and, you know, I have a happy family. I mean, we're kind of satisfied with that. Not a psychopathic brain. This need to control. I can't emphasize that enough. Need to control. So what happens, and even rapists, by the way, the sexual high that comes from rape is not from sex. It's from the control. It's from the control. And all of our leaders, again, what is the United States as a whole doing right now? It's all about, my banner says, "And U.S. Empire," before it ends us. And this is what we're doing. We're trying to control the world. We saw this in all the old movies, but that's what it is. And that's psychopath. So if you have all of these, and they all can range in different amounts, you will rise to the top. So and this isn't just in government, it's in business, it's even in nonprofits, frankly, it's in a lot of things. If you have those traits, you will tend to rise above. And then 2/3 of all people are really doomed, I already went through those parts about followers, are doomed to be followers of it's a yin-yang. So one of the ways that, one of the emotional, I always say, you know, you can see this. How do you tell what's propaganda? Okay, well, it's not dry facts. It's not just facts telling you, I mean, you could even use COVID as an example. I hate to bring that up, well, that's an unpopular topic, but it's a recent thing. Instead of telling you the dry facts, you know, this percentage, whatever, no. it was all emotionally based. The wars, the Iraq War, but all of the wars are based on pressing people's buttons. There are namely 5 emotions that people are prisoner to. It's 2/3 of all people. Not everyone, but 2/3 of all people. Fear, of course. Hate, demonize the enemy, make them the other. Fear, hate, greed. There's your con man. People want to get rich quick. Why do we have all the lotteries, etc.? We're all wasting our money on lotteries. Greed. Blind loyalty, that's part of the conformity one. And the last one is false pride. Not real pride, but false pride. Pride is every bit as powerful as fear and hate. A lot of people say we're being manipulated by fear and hate. I honestly think pride is just as powerful. You tell a group that they are special, unique, they have, well, look at Hillary Clinton, calling people deplorables. Very bad mistake on her part. Because there were some people in her own base. A lot of people, though, that she thought she was talking to, she thought, well, we're the superior ones. And you tell any group, of course we know national patriotism, national, but it can be ethnic, it can be racial, it can be gender-based, it can be any of those groups, and it can be any group at all. Any group at all. If they're told that they are superior, that's the Zimbardo experiment. They weren't different based on race or gender or anything. They were the same classmates, and they still fell for it. So the Iraq War, am I going past? I mean, got a couple minutes left? Okay, I'm getting close here. So the Iraq War, I got interviewed a couple of times just recently because of the anniversary of the Iraq War. And they said, well, what was the deal? What was the difference? About the Iraq War? And I said, well, one of the things that I think was the difference is when they launched the campaign, weapons of mass destruction, Al-Qaeda, Saddam was behind 9/11. Completely, I mean, again, not a fact. There was no evidence or facts that Saddam was behind 9/11. And yet, they got 70% of the American public. This was polls were done, not only at the time of the Iraq War starting, but even a year later. And people believed that Saddam in Iraq was behind 9/11. Even though it was Al-Qaeda, it was our boys, it was our proxy force. It was Al-Qaeda. It was the U.S. proxy force that attacked us on 9/11. Not Saddam. Saddam had nothing. In fact, he was an enemy of Al-Qaeda. And yet, worked so well, got 70% of the American public to believe it. So, that when they launched that campaign, and little by little, they got the media, they bribed the media. Okay, I'm just going to quick tell a story. It was Pelly. Did you know on 60 Minutes, Pelly? He was in my kitchen on March 9th, I think. March 9th, Scott Pelly, and I was telling him, well, this is not true. Coleen, none of these things are true. And he goes, well, Coleen, I would say that half of my colleagues did not believe it either. But when we were told, when Colin Powell gave his presentation, we all then believed. That was directly from Scott Pelly. What is Colin Powell? He's the man in the white coat. He's Milgram's man in the white coat. Everybody trusted Colin Powell. There's another thing that went on right at the same time that I later learned. Kathleen Park? No, that's not it. Gosh, I knew her name. I heard her speak one time. She was Rumsfeld's assistant for the media. Do you remember her name? You're shaking your head. Kathleen someone. She wrote a 300-page program, How to Embed the Media. And that was written in January of 2003. And then at their cocktail parties and the little leaking things that they have go on, they told all the heads of the media between the end of January and February that this was going to be a different war, you're going to be embedded, you're going to be a part of it, your ratings will soar, etc. And then that, along with the Colin Powell, completely flipped the media. Because people wonder how there could be so many, there was a lot of distrust in December. But by the time you got to February, it had all evaporated. Our media, I got on the front page of the New York Times on March 7th, 2003. I was like there were only one or two people that made front page. I don't even know if there was another one, but at that time. Walter Pincus was in Land A and our Knight Ridder, but theirs were buried. The Knight Ridder did good, I have to say. They won awards because they got it right. Now, after they were able to fool everyone to go to war in Iraq, this is the part that I think we're at now. They bragged to themselves. Karl Rove said, "We can make our own reality." So this is really a deciding thing. I mean, they were a little tentative about lying before. They were a little more careful. But once they think, we can fool them no matter what. These deplorables, we can tell them anything and get them to believe absolute opposite. And Rove said, and we make our own reality, and you little people will be left stewing afterwards and dealing with it. Because once they lie, they just keep going. So people do come to their senses. It takes a little while, even for those 70%. But after a while, they start to realize, what's true and not. Then they distract it and go on to the next one. So it's just an ever march on making your own reality. People ask how can you tell what's propaganda? Everybody from different sides, what's true, what's not true. That is a good question, and there's no perfect answer to it. But here are some tips. For starters, you have to read everything. And a lot of people, I have a bumper sticker that's from John Prine saying, "Throw away your TV." My bumper sticker says, "Throw away your TV." Famous, good song from John Prine. And a lot of people would like to do that or throw their shoes at the TV because they know a lot of it's lying. I sit there yelling at my TV every night. But I force myself to listen at least to some mainstream news. I was talking to Joyce before, and she has a Newsweek article about how it goes back to Bernstein and how the CIA was paying and had co-opted. Some of them were actually CIA on the dole in the 70s, 200 to 400. It's far worse now, by the way, far worse now. And if you've been following the Twittergate with Matt Taibbi and others, this was this FBI and the CIA telling who to censor and who not to censor. And maybe you were happy with some of the censorship. They told you they were censoring misinformation. My gosh, no, the misinformation was all over the news, and that's what they allowed. They allowed the misinformation. It was okay. So you have to read a spectrum of things. And this is how intelligent, open source, they call them, open source intelligence analysts. They read across the board. So I know a lot of this group will hate right-wing, hate conservatives, etc. No, read it. I even, back in the day, before dearly departed Rush Limbaugh died, every once in a while I listened to him. Not that I liked the guy or anything, but I did, because you have to know what they're saying. And so that's for starters. One other clue is when the ends justify the means. Okay, propaganda is always going to have this. Our Tackling Torture group, the thing that started torture in the United States was something called the ticking time bomb hypothetical. The ticking time bomb is that you catch the guy who has planted the bomb. There's a lot of ifs here, by the way. You catch the guy who has just planted a bomb, and now it's going to blow up, and all of New York City will die in this thing. Well, isn't it ethical to torture him to get the information out to go find the bomb? To be honest, most people are going to fall for it. I would say feeble-minded people, but the truth is most. An ethics professor at St. Thomas, not Delahunty, a different one, wrote, I was arguing with ethics professors in forums that it's ethical to torture if you have, it's called utilitarianism. It's a subset of utilitarian ethics. And I was arguing with college professors that it's not ethical to torture because the ends justify the means. And so, but here's the problem. You concocted that end. You know, there's the old lifeboat thing of pushing, you're making up a good ending. Every single one of our wars, bringing democracy to Iraq, it's always about making up no one's going to argue with that. Right now, Ukraine, helping the poor Ukrainians fight for freedom. We had a lot of people in our group that are into that. One person came up to me at the last peace demonstration who believes that we're helping Ukrainians fight for their human rights and democracy and freedom. Okay, so that's the noble end. There's almost no chance that can happen. All you're doing is bombing the village to save it. You're not going to save the village by bombing it. You know, and this is always this ends justify the means. And by the way, even the great thing about that propaganda is even when it's now recognized that you weren't able to save the village by bombing it, that you weren't able to bring democracy to Iraq, even when you recognize that, you meant well, we were well-intentioned. This is what, by the way, Fauci is saying now, we were all well-intentioned. So the truth is, I got some more little tips on here about what to do, but we'll end here and take some questions.
And while you are preparing your questions, I have a couple things in mind. And one is an apology to Coleen and to Kim DeFranco, who prepared a wonderful slideshow of pictures of WAMM people and actions over the years. You've heard the term technical difficulties. We're having problems. And so we're sorry about that, but we'll post those pictures online. And in the meantime, you know, while you are thinking your questions, I'm going to pass the bucket. And maybe if we earn some extra cash and money, look, this has a great big hole in the top. If you have a big bundle of cash, you can fit it right in there. But maybe we can work out some of the technical difficulty problems. If you haven't already, or if you'd like to give a little more, please do. And while we're passing the bucket, I'm going to ask Sophia, who is going to later during the annual meeting, business meeting part, which can be, you know, we can shorten that to be very quick.
Jimmy, you're going to be first. I'm going to take 1 second to say my homemade rag rug is not for sale. However, because I just brought it as a sample, it's like the 5th one I've done, and I'm trying to get a group together to save the landfills. Because if you have clothes that can be donated, that can be resold, great. But if they have a little stain, if they're frayed, any piece of material at all, 78 pounds per person goes in the landfill every year. So I'm trying to do my bit and get a group together, teach them how to crochet these rugs. So come and look, and by the way, if you have rags at your house, I'll collect them and use them for these rugs. Okay, maybe it'll be a WAMM committee, save the landfills. And one of the baskets has the Jimmy Dore, those Jimmy Dore shows in Minneapolis and St. Paul sold out right away. He's a comedian, but he is very much against the wars. He's very much against propaganda. Unfortunately, he uses the F word sometimes, and he's got kind of a mouth on it. However, you know, it sold out so quickly, and I think that's a really good sign. Both Minneapolis and St. Paul one sold out right away. And there's one ticket left, and it's in an auction right now. So they went for $38 originally. Okay, what did I say? You don't get distracted by public opinion. Okay, you don't get distracted. You have a goal. You're focused. Okay, the goal is, with so many people marching against the Iraq War. Absolutely. Around the world. But, you know, I was in one of them around the Lake area. And it went from way up here, you know why? Vietnam syndrome. Yeah. That's why people, you know, United States of amnesia. Where's Joyce? She wanted me to say that United States of amnesia didn't have amnesia yet about Vietnam. And so at the start, lots and lots of people remembered they hadn't totally conquered Vietnam syndrome. But the people who have this agenda and this goal, Cheney and the Project for New American Century, Wolfowitz, they made this up in '92. You talk about your perseverance. They rolled out the campaign in August, but they were hell-bent to take out Iraq from '92 on, as long as we get our new Pearl Harbor, quote unquote. And that means that you use trauma. When can you get a country so malleable? By using trauma. Even though the 9/11 trauma had nothing to do with Iraq, you can do a bait and switch, and which is what they did. And Cheney is the authoritative voice. He doesn't talk like me, all high voiced and whatever. Whoa, he talks like the Milgram scientist. But the bottom line is what I said about distraction. They are not distracted by public opinion. We see this now. Unfortunately, this make your own reality. Everyone is taking their cue. Our other lower level politicians, our senators and our congresspersons, they've all taken the cue from Karl Rove. You go into their office or you write them something and they send you a little pat you on the head, thank you for your opinion, but I'll do what I want.
So that all I'm saying is, how important is propaganda?
It is important because it works for a while. That's 70%. You know, Iraq could have been ended right away too, if people had kept, but they didn't. It worked really well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Barry.
Yeah, I'm going to try and articulate this. I myself know that I am both good and evil. I possess all, and I possess probably most of those traits that you're talking about. But maybe you said, I think it's a matter of degree, recognizing that you have, that you like to persevere, but not overdo. You know, I think there's a flip side to everything. You know, if you have that quality, there's also an opposite side. You know, and not all things are bad.
I tried a little bit to get that through. Okay, the question is, everybody is good and bad, and we all have a little bit of everything, which is absolutely true. What I'm saying is 70% of all people are really way below 27. So they're way on the other end, 70%. Less than 1% have the score of 40, which actually means you are a Jeffrey Dahmer. But 27 is where a lot of leaders are, 28, 30. And they have some of the traits, like I said, a neurosurgeon has the focus part. So they have some of them, but not all of them. So absolutely it's a mixed bag. I did tell you also, there is another category. Besides the psychopaths, the leaders, and the people doomed to be followers, whatever, that's only still like 70–80%, right? I have another category that I came up with, no social psychologist, just my own brain. And I called it it's a bad word, the WTF Club. Okay, and we're in this, I think, Barry, a lot of us are in this, where we see the lies, And we're just like, don't know, except, you know, you're trying to convince people, but it's really hard. And it's like this is, some of it is you got critical thinkers and that, what the F Club. And so, yeah, absolutely. Yes, in the back. I wrote an article with a former Foreign Service officer 5 or 6, 7 years ago called Recipe Concocted for Perpetual War. So when they conquered Vietnam syndrome with Iraq, and as we well know, it's just never come back. And why hasn't it come back? Because there are no costs, no visible costs to Americans. We have no draft anymore, so there's nobody that, you know, is forced to serve. They get paid a lot to go into the military. It's a poverty draft, but it's not a forced draft. And by the way, I'll just say, I think if there had been a draft, I know a lot of people will disagree. I think if we had still had the draft, the Iraq War, with all of the opposition and Vietnam syndrome, would not have started. They wouldn't have been able to pull it over. But besides that, we don't pay taxes. All of our wars before this, they raised the taxes sometimes to 90%. Can you imagine if we just got a bill on our taxes now for 1/100th of the trillions of dollars the wars have cost? If we got a tax bill for $1,000, which is, in my calculation, is probably more than that, or less than that, $100, which is what each taxpayer would owe for the trillions of dollars that have been spent, the war would end tomorrow. It would end tomorrow, but we're not paying for it. It's going on to the national debt card. Bush started at $5 trillion, and Obama took it up to $10 trillion, and then Trump raised it again to $20 trillion. It's now at like $32 trillion of national debt. But we don't care, it's on the credit card. So we don't have to pay it. It's, by the way, a Ponzi scheme, it's a bubble. It's gonna burst. We might be on the edge right now. But so far, we don't think war costs anything. And the last one is, this is one that ties in with Ukraine. They made war perpetual by ending casualties, American casualties. So after Iraq and Afghanistan, there was, 7,000 and 4,000 people killed. People were starting, 2006, people were starting to go against the wars again. But Obama realized, no, we'll have no boots on the ground. We will start drone bombing. So all the drone bombing, and frankly, just plain aerial bombing. So when they went to aerial bomb Libya to smithereens, according to Hillary, Samantha Power, Susan Rice, 3 women, get over the illusion, we're all good and bad. Get over this nonsense about women are better. I have all kinds of stories about female FBI agents trying to be more ruthless than the men. I don't even go there. But, these women argued with Gates, who didn't want to bomb Libya, and they succeeded. We were bombing Libya for human rights. And so when they were bombing, the war powers came up after 90 days. And Hillary Clinton's legal advisor, Harold Koh, the former dean of, I think, Yale, he told her, you know what, war powers resolution no longer applies because it's no longer war. When we're merely bombing them and no pilot is in danger and no American casualties, it doesn't apply because it's not war. Of course, the next question to ask Harold Koh would have been, well, what is it then? Plain murder? Is it just plain murder when you fly planes over and bomb people? But no one asked that question. And so when you have these things, and by the way, drone and aerial bombing and use of proxy forces. So if we can incite any dissident group all over the world, Ukraine is not the first place that we've done this. We did it in Afghanistan in order to fight the Soviet Union. We incited the Mujahideen. They didn't have the Stinger missiles. We armed the Mujahideen. This was a big New Brzezinski's big plan, and it worked. We defeated the Soviet Union. So this proxy force is what's going on. The sad thing is you can't get the people who have stand with Ukraine on their buttons. They don't understand this. The Ukrainians are the ones paying the price. They're the ones that we are sacrificing. We sacrifice all of our allies. The Nord Stream pipeline, we sacrificed Germany, for heaven's sakes. You know, Chris Hedges is really much more articulate than me, and there's others. But the problem is, when you're so ruthless, I mean, that's a psychopathic trait too, ruthlessness. It probably fits in there somewhere. But when you're so ruthless, you don't care about your proxy forces because you're using them, exploiting them. And then there's no casualties here in America, and that is another reason why, right now, people walked by me at Lake Street last week and said, we're not in a war. The United States is not in a war. A lot of people, my friend Todd Pierce was in the new school. He had a PhD, people in his class that said we're not in war. No war, because it's all cost-free to Americans. It's going to end, by the way, because now I just got to finish here. We're up against nuclear war. So at this point, we've been sleepwalked because thinking, oh, war, it doesn't hurt us, you know, it's just those foreign people. It doesn't hurt us, and we've been sleepwalked right up to the point where they're ready to push the button. I know a lot of people don't think this will ever happen. I totally disagree. And our VIPS group and Wilkerson, I mean, all the people I know and respect that are smarter than me, all think that we are risking right now, and not just from Russia, from the United States. If Hitler in his bunker, when he was ready to commit suicide and losing, when he was in his bunker, if he had had a nuclear button, guess what? We wouldn't be here. And that's the thing, is when you're powerful, it's the most dangerous thing for an empire to go down. This is when all chaos, all hell breaks loose.
There's another question.
Well, Bill had one,
Yes, it befuddles me, people that did not believe the propaganda leading up to the Iraq War. All of a sudden now they're believing the propaganda now. I don't understand that.
Okay, so, good question. The lady that walked by me that had stand with Ukraine last week, and I said, well, how can you forget history? United States of amnesia. How can you forget the history? What the goal here is for the United States. The goal for the United States, they call it the rule-based order. I call it the ruler-based order. There's no international law involved, by the way, unless we are enforcing it on others. We are above the law. We're kind of like the police that think we can shoot and that they can't, you know, we'll never be held accountable. So this is that ruler-based order that has us being superior. And people, the one answer is, but this is very different. They said that about Libya. They said it about, well, Ellison, by the way. Ellison was against war. He was against he's a good example. He was against the Iraq War. I was on the Capitol steps with Ellison and Betsy, Becky Laurie and I went to Cindy Sheehan's ditch when the Iraq War was going on. And after we came back, Becky Laurie and Keith Ellison and I were on the Capitol steps, had a bigger crowd than this, and shaking our fists saying how bad it was. Keith Ellison was an anti-war firebrand. And we get to where Obama, his leader, is now leading it with Syria and Libya, and he switches and starts writing op-eds to go to war. He's completely switched in that little time. And the reason is, you know, people will say, this is different. This isn't the same as the last 20 wars. We've toppled 60 governments. But all of a sudden, you know, toppling Libya and Syria, oh, those are different. It's as lame an answer as you can get, but that's what they use. It's all a really long history lesson here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to back up even before the coup in 2014.
Right.
Victoria Nuland has been a main neocon figure in our government. She worked for Dick Cheney. She was a State Department. She was a main aide to Dick Cheney. And she was, of course, involved in all of these other wars as well. Well, they started throwing lots of money into Ukraine. They started up independent media. I think she admitted they spent $5 billion or something like that. $5 million, $5 billion. I don't know if it was a million or billion. She's on a speech where she admits it. Before the coup. So they throw in lots of money. They do propaganda. This is how the so-called color revolutions occur around the world. This is if we don't have to bomb them. We try to use soft power color revolutions by funding dissident groups in foreign countries. And so we were already doing that, and then the 2014 riots occur, the protests occur. It looks like there's some evidence that the snipers who shot 60 people at the Maidan Square were aligned with the Nazis and aligned with the Ukrainian side against the government. Then they made a deal. They said that Yanukovych could have a referendum, and the next day they forced him out. So this is a coup. We've done 60-some of these coups around the world, all over South America, Chile, Iran, all throughout history. Don't tell me this is new and different. No, this is really the fight for freedom, after we have done these coups all over. So we toppled the government. Then when you topple any government, you allow in complete chaos. It doesn't turn out well. We were always told that we bring peace and love and freedom and democracy. Look at Iraq. You know, we don't bring democracy to countries that we topple their government, even if you don't like their governments. It doesn't work that way. So then there were breakaway provinces, and the Kiev government started bombing the Donbass. They killed thousands of people, and finally Putin goes in. I am not I've been called a Saddam apologist, a Assad, Saddam, all of the places where we're at war. It's very easy. If you talk about the facts and the history, they'll call you a lover of Russia right now. And I'm not. I would cross the street to have coffee with Putin. There's a lot of people that I don't especially personally like. But that doesn't mean I want to take out their country and hurt all the civilians in those countries.
She's stepping away from the microphone. I know Kathleen has a question. We have some announcements that we need to scooch in here, and then we'll start the WAMM annual meeting, and then we'll close this portion. Oh, Kristen, if you want to have that, I think she has that. Or there's one here.
Hi, I'm just going to talk about the current and upcoming events, and we have a lot of them at your tables now, but there's more papers back there on the tables. First off, March 26th, that's coming up on Sunday, tomorrow, Car Caravan for Cuba, and the U.S. blockade of Cuba, and Cuba off the U.S. state sponsors terrorism. Okay, isn't there a...
You're going to be here at Easter, you said?
Oh, right, yeah, okay.
Playing.
Okay.
Trombone? All right.
On the 15th of April, well, we've got a
Where are
few
you
before then, but Funds for Human Needs, Not War, anti-war protest
Caesar?
Saturday, April 15th.
My son is
The
looking.
supposed tax day. Say no to endless U.S. wars, Russia, China, Ukraine, Syria, Iraq, Somalia, everywhere.
Over by Lake Cedar.
It's going to be at 1 p.m. at the Main Plaza, 301 Cedar Avenue, Minneapolis. Okay. Oh, okay. There's a coffee hour on Saturday, April 8th at the WAMM Building, 4200 Cedar Avenue. Rising Hope in Ecuador. That should be really good because there's been a lot of things going on there, a lot of protests. Okay. Come to the Solidarity Committee on the Americas evening meeting, and what that's going to be is Monday. Wait a minute. I've got 2 papers mixed together. Sorry about that. WAMM Second Monday Movies presents Dr. Strangelove. Oh, I remember that one. So this is going to be on April 10th on Monday at 7 p.m. at the WAMM building. That should be fun. Okay, back to what I moved on. Come to the Solidarity Committee on the Americas evening meeting. This is at the Mayday Bookstore at 301 Cedar Avenue, Minneapolis. That is on Tuesday, April 11th, 7 p.m. to 8:30. And we have a very important fundraiser coming up. It'll be great to get out there in the sunshine. The WAMM Walk Against Weapons. That is going to be Saturday, June 3rd, rain or shine, at Como Lake. So that's going to be starting at 10:30.
You mean at Comus?
No, this is Como Lake. In St. Paul, the other city. And this is going to be dedicated to wonderful Marie Brown, who just died recently, whose tireless efforts contributed to the years of successful walks to WAMM. He's going to be honored. Okay, let me see if there's one more. Yep, sorry. Okay. Oh, this looks great. We're going to welcome Medea Benjamin in the Twin Cities on Friday, May 19th. Well, let's see. Friday, May 19th through Sunday, May 21st. She's going to be touring with her new book, War in Ukraine, Making Sense of a Senseless Conflict. So, to join the planning for this visit and book tour, contact WAMM. This will be great. And I think one of the baskets over there, is that right, Lisa? Has Medea's book in it. That's a wonderful basket over there. I think I've covered everything. Make sure that I think on the table you've got postcards to send to our illustrious senators. Hey.
Yeah, on April 9th, at the dead end of on April 9th, at the dead end of Nicollet Avenue, where dead ends at the old Kmart, we will have a ceremony and speakers and a march down to the beautiful memorial to Deir Yassin, which was it's a memorial to the massacre of the Palestinians in 1948 on April 9th. We'll have a bell ringing at the memorial, but we'll have speakers at 29th and Nicollet, right at the end there, right by the Midway Greenway. We'll walk down the bike trail to the beautiful memorial they have for it. But it's always good to remember these things, so it's a constant reminder of what Israel is doing into Palestinians today. And yes, Palestinians are real, not according to the Prime Minister of Israel. They don't exist, but they are there. They're people.
Thank you. And do remember the weekend is May 13th, I believe. There's a memorial event here for Colin Mann at St. Joan of Arc. I'm sure that's And we should start the WAMM annual meeting, business meeting part. And I believe that I'm the person to call that to order. We've already introduced our staff person, Kristen Dooley, who is somewhere, oh, there she is, staff member Kristen Dooley. And we're now going to have our annual song set to music by Sophia. Are you ready for the annual song? Annual song. And then if you would, I should say too, if there are any of you WAMM women who are here who have not been on the board before or would like to serve on the board in the future, let us know, because we would like to add additional people to the board of directors. It's a really fun group of people, and we're hoping to start getting together in person again. We've been meeting. Here comes the annual report set to a tune by Jo Schubert, also known as Chickpea, because she's part of the group called the String Beats. She and her husband, Roger Huffington, who's known as our musicians, set the annual report to music performed by Sophia Shorai.
Day by day, week by week, for peace we act and speak. Equality is what we seek, injustice as we mend. So when urged this past year to boycott Israel here, helping to make all aware apartheid now must end. Well, each week till 8:30, protested the unjust fate of ICE prisoners who migrate to seek asylum in our land. When did vigil and walk against war? Peace kites last summer did soar. Postcards said no more, nukes must all be banned. At line 3 blues we told the God, it's water, not oil we love. Line 3 causing fouling of our water that is life. In 22, WAMM did insist Cuba off-state terrorist list, and that sanctions not persist so Cuban people can survive. An exchange WAMM did recommend between St. Paul and Bethlehem, sister cities thus to blame, the chance of cultures to meet. Memories of polyamory move us to activity, moving forward collectively. WAMM's a powerful force for peace. WAMM's a powerful force for peace. WAMM's a powerful force for peace.
Who brought Sophia to our attention this year. Thank you for singing the annual song. If you look at your program, you will see that the minutes from last year's annual meeting are in there, and across the minutes in green type, there is an incorrect date. It says these were approved May 17, 2023, which has not technically are. So, as you are aware, that's my typographical error. they were approved May 17th last year, 2022. And that's what, so those are the minutes from the prior annual meeting, which we did on Zoom. And it's so much more pleasant to be together because you may continue to bid on the baskets through the end of this meeting today. You do not need to be present to win your basket. So if you want to do an additional bid, go right ahead and do that. We're going to go to the, let's see, I think the financial report. Also, a couple things are printed in your program, right in the middle. Two things that we will affirm just by our applause today. In the middle column of the, you'll see the financial report in your program. The middle column are the actual income and expenditures from the year 2022, and they're compared to the 2022 budget, which is the column on the right. And you'll see some of our income went way over our predictions in our budget, and we are so grateful for the generosity of individuals, a lot of small contributions, and in addition to some major donors who make their very generous contributions. So, we came close to budget last year in our income, and we were a little bit over budget in our expenditures. And we are, part of that, for example, rent expenditure is because we paid some rent for the prior year in 2022. So it's a little bit of a, it's not really an increase in the expenditure. So I would ask that you, by your applause, approve the financial report for the year 2022 as recommended by the WAMM Board, right? If you look at the left-hand column, the predictions for the 2023 budget, we're looking, we kind of based on what the actuals were in 2022. And our finance committee has come to the conclusion that we could raise $124,000 and we could spend $124,000 probably also. Things that are a little peculiar and out of the range of clear planning right now is salaries, because one of our staff people left at the end of last year, Katie Davis, and we haven't yet hired a full or a regular staff person, but as we said earlier, Fiona is covering in the interim, doing a classic job, and Kristen continues on the staff too. And those are two positions that are not full-time positions. They overlap and work together a lot. There's also something I want to point out to you, just in the income for the 2023 budget. It says community shares $4,000. Community Shares of Minnesota is an organization that has been operating in Minnesota for decades and funds many peace and justice and community-based organizations. It has for decades. But it closed its doors April, May, June, July. It took a long time for them to shut down. And WAMM was among the organizations, about 10 organizations, that they dispersed their final amount of money to, and that happened to come to us after the first of the year in 2023. That's why we have a large amount, $4,000 from Community Shares. That's the last time we'll see income from Community Shares. And I actually served on the board of Community Shares of Minnesota for a time, so we kept close contact with them. Terrific organization and community-based funder that we are sad to see leave the community, or not leave, but be ending its time. So that is that large, $4,000 came to us, and we're grateful for that. So last time there will be income from community shares. So aside from that point that I wanted to draw your attention to, I would ask that you would, as recommended by the Finance Committee and the WAMM Board of Directors, affirm this 2023 budget by applause. Yeah. If anybody disagrees, you could speak up, and I suppose we could go on about that. But I think we'll plunge ahead, okay? Yeah. Good. Let's see what comes next. Oh, the board. Yeah. You have a list of the current board of directors, and some of their terms are ending now in 2023, and each one of them, I think with special attendance to the, special attention to the changes that we're undergoing right now, have agreed to serve another term. And those individuals are, I have them down, agreed to serve on the WAMM board with this new term: Diane Hagasak, Sarah Martin, Mary Jean O'Haran, Emma Strong, and Carol Walker. And those of you who are present could stand. And then, those of you who are currently on the board and your term isn't up until next year: Sarah Olson, Jo Schubert, Molly Wilbur-Cohen, and Lucia. Yeah, but that's for next year. Let's all stand up and say, thank you, board. Some are far away, as we said, in Michigan, and so we are affirming those board members by consensus, unless somebody has a complaint about one of them. I know I've talked a lot today, and I'm sorry. It's because those co-chairs are far away. Let's see, I'm looking at anything else we need to do as far as our official business meeting is concerned. Walk Against Weapons is great fun. And I think isn't there a flyer here? Yes, oh yeah. It's there at the very end. It explains where we'll be meeting on Saturday, June 3rd, rain or shine, but it'll probably be a beautiful day. At the Coal Lake Pavilion in St. Paul, and many people will be walking around Coal Lake with signs. It's a way that, we educate and draw attention to people as we walk against weapons of war. And we encourage you to join in that walk. And if you have a mind to, we are going to be sending out another sheet like this, mailing it out, and it will also on the back side have a place where you can enter the names of it and addresses of your friends and relatives who will sponsor you on that walk. And that's a way that we raise some funds for WAMM, because we're always keeping going and keeping going. And that does cost us some income and expenses. Is there anything else we should cover in our business meeting? Yes?
I think we should thank Lucia for taking on this morning.
Thank you. Usually we trade off a lot more. Those people who aren't here in the winter, or because, it's fun. We have people all over the United States today. It's great. So if you would like to join the WAMM board, let us know. And you can still bid on a basket, and maybe we're closing the bidding right now. What? Shout it out, Sarah. Oh, she doesn't want to shout it out. What? Oh, she said never mind. So I think we can adjourn the annual meeting unless somebody has, what?
We're supposed to, we have that on that table, and as an action, we're supposed to give them to someone.
Oh,
It
yes.
might benefit from some more information.
Another action for you. Another action that you can do. There's a WAMM newsletter on your table. Take that with you and pass it along to someone you know or someone you don't know very well. I take some to our local library branches and, drop them off wherever people will pick them up. And is Coleen here? I see Coleen. Do I see her? Oh, there she is. Thank you again for such a thought-provoking and lively talk. We really appreciate it. Thank you.